Started. Amazing. All right, everybody, welcome. I'm so thrilled that you're all here today, and I see a lot of familiar faces and names, and that's really heartwarming. So welcome to this Peptida-sponsored webinar, co-hosted by me and Steve Kirkby on more than one traditional way to do research. So as fellows, you're all thinking about how to launch your scholastic activity and scholarly pursuits, both during fellowship and afterwards. And I think it's pretty clear that the path of clinical research, basic science research, and translational research is pretty well defined, and we've had a lot of people go down those paths. And I have to shout out to one of the CHLA fellows, Dr. Rimatani, who said to me, you know, there seem to be other ways too that we can fulfill our scholarly pursuits that are not just in those paths, and was curious about learning from other people who have been successful and launching incredible careers in these areas, what those paths were, what were some of the pitfalls, and what are the benchmarks of success. And so we decided to have this seminar. So we have 4 incredible speakers, and the way it is going to work is everybody will talk a little bit about different fields. So as you saw in our little flyer, we've got Dr. Khan here from Kansas, Dr. Ong from Seattle, as well as Dr. Sadramali from Hopkins, and Dr. Ortenberg, also from Seattle. We're going to talk about their careers and their paths. As we allow them to talk, please feel free to put any questions you may have in the chat. Also, after we finish everybody's sessions, if you are feeling brave, feel free to turn on your video and ask the question yourself. And so without further ado, to give everybody their chance to talk to you about their wonderful careers, we are going to start with Dr. Erin Khan, and she comes to us from Mercy Children's in Kansas.
Thank you so much. And I, of course, am for the first time ever having internet problems in my office. So I'm on my phone, and Dr. Boucher is going to be very nice and advance my slides for me. So, hey, everybody, I'm Erin Khan. Go ahead. A little bit about me. I was born and raised in Kansas, and then I went to Oklahoma for undergrad, back to Kansas for medical school. My husband and I couples matched in Indiana, and then I went to fellowship out in Colorado, and full circle came back here to Kansas City. So when I was at Riley Children's, during my chief year, I developed a passion for medical education, and I knew that I wanted to do something in the educational field, and I hoped for that during my fellowship, but it wasn't a common thing, medical education scholarship. And so I really didn't have any specific research interest. I kind of went into fellowship with an open mind, with my ultimate sort of career goal is to be a program director of a fellowship or a residency program one day. And then when I started at Children's Hospital Colorado, I found out that our inpatient unit was covered by 3 PGY2 residents, and they were taking call every 3 or 4 days. There was no outside coverage provided from any other, input, and they really didn't have a lot of onboarding experience. So advance a little bit for me. And they also had trach vent dependent patients on the floor, which was often the first time that they'd ever encountered these patients. And, as you all know, they have a lot of complications. So this was what the teaching looked like when I had first started. It was a whiteboard in the resident room with little check boxes. And this was 3 weeks into their 4-week rotation. So you can see no check boxes were done. And so the residents would comment, if you go to the next one, they would comment that it was just so busy, we never got any education. They would comment that, the basics should have been covered earlier. And they also would say, like, I've never changed a trach. I don't even know how to deal with that. And so I came up with this idea to sort of have an onboarding experience called PrEP, Pediatric Resident Education in Pulmonary. And this was sort of an onboarding experience for our residents to learn all of the basics up front before they actually started the rotation. And you can imagine any protected time for education requires a lot of buy-in. And so getting my department to buy in, getting the residency program to buy in, and then I did some sort of educational projects. So I ran some focus groups. We sought out mentorship within my department and outside of it. We went through a whole curriculum development process. I got IRB approval, got grant funding, planned for coverage of the patients while the residents were learning. And then we started teaching and we started prep. So the first day we did this was on the first day of their rotation in 2018. This is what the schedule looked like. So they would come, they'd learn about CF, lots of trach vent time, lots of hands-on time, learn about vents, learn about airway clearance, pulmonary function testing, all that good stuff. And then in the afternoon, they would actually start taking over the patients and caring for them. And this was all based on McCluskey's theory of margin. I'm going to nerd out a little bit on you guys. So this is talking about power versus load, where power is next looking at sort of what support and skills you have versus your load being all of the extra stuff. And so our hope was to give residents power in terms of how to change a trach and educate them on all of that so that their load would be more balanced in, weighing out the difference between being on call and taking patients and all of that good stuff. And so the goal was for prep to sort of give them more power and shift the theory of margin. So advance a couple of slides. So, so we started prep, and then I did a lot of extra things in terms of like evaluating and preparing the assessments for it, doing curriculum revisions. I realized that I needed a little help in terms of medical education scholarship, and so I sought out an advanced degree, and then we did monthly data collection. All of this led to completing the sort of project for, prep boot camp in 2019. I then spent a few months writing a lot. I submitted my first manuscript in October, my second manuscript in December, presented to the entire group on adult learning theories, and actually was given a nice award for that, which was unheard of in our department before. My first publication was out, accepted April 2020, but then you can see here was actually published October 2020, so a full year later. I completed a certificate program that month in medical education, and then my third manuscript on the outcomes data for that was submitted around June of that year. I graduated. My second publication was accepted in October, and then, as you can see, finally published January of 2021. And now I, graduated and a clinician educator. So I'm on my third going on fourth year here in Kansas City, where I'm a clinician educator, and then living the dream. I am the director of resident education and also associate program director for the PEDS-PULM fellowship, and still working on that third manuscript. So just throwing in, and then prep is still going strong in Colorado, which is really exciting to me. So just sort of some ideas for success in those who are interested in medical education projects. I think that really any educational project or any scholarship project, developing a really diverse mentorship team is a good plan, kind of getting people from all angles. I also would just encourage everyone to focus on things they're passionate about. So for me, that was resident education. And so then I had to say no to some things like medical education and some other sort of projects that didn't excite me. And so my next suggestion would be that, yes, as a fellow, do say yes, but also learn to say no, or involve your mentor team in terms of like what is actually going to be productive for you. And then lastly, in terms of educational scholarship specifically, be really rigorous in your planning, using educational frameworks and different things to sort of build your project, which is going to give you, clout, but also really help your project in terms of like publications and viability. You might need to seek out higher education for that. You might need to do a little bit, master's program in education or a certificate program, or even just take a class or two to sort of help develop your skills. And then really getting involved and asking for help. I think a key thing for me was developing and finding mentors sort of outside of my pediatric pulmonary department at Children's Hospital Colorado, where nobody did education formally. And so I had mentors outside of my division, but also mentors across the country. So using ATS as a resource and also AAP and Peptidem. And then writing and revisions just take forever. I think this is especially true for all research, but especially medical education, because not that many people do it. And so getting those revisions and getting that feedback from reviewers takes a very, very long time. And then here's a couple of just suggestions for journals for you all. Med Portal is a perfect one for curriculum projects. It does take a really long time to get published, but it's a really good one to share curriculum, and also a good place to start if you're thinking about doing a curriculum project. Check there to see if it's been done before. Pete's Poem does do some educational things, lots of like editorials. So your project might be a good fit if you're just explaining what you've done. So check that out if you're not having any success elsewhere. Academic Peds is good for Gen Peds things. And so if you like me, if you're doing sort of a project that was for general pediatricians, then it could be a good fit. And lastly, ATS Scholar, which I didn't have any luck with, but you might, but it is just very expensive to publish there. And that's all I have.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your talk. That was really, really wonderful. And I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions after all the speakers go. Thank you so much, Dr. Khan. So my next speaker is Dr. Theta Ong, who's going to be talking about quality improvement, and she joins us from Seattle Children's.
Oh, sorry. Hey, can you hear me okay? And then I just realized that I have the wrong presentation up. Hold on. Oops. Hold on. How's that? Do you see the right thing or no? Can you hear me okay? Sorry, just checking. Yeah, okay, great. Thanks everyone. Thanks, Laura. I really appreciate the chance to talk to you all. I'm Theta Ong. I'm from Seattle Children's. I am, well, not from Seattle Children's, but I've been here for, 14 years. And I know that because that is exactly the same age as my oldest daughter as a whole. I love a lot of things about quality improvement, and my slides are pretty informal and pretty brief. It's just a chance to kind of introduce a little bit about my path to you all, and you'll actually see a lot of overlaps with what Erin just said. So I think that's really interesting, and a good chance for, I hope, leads to a lot of discussion. So I have 3 daughters. We are enjoying all that could be from Seattle over all this time. Like I said, my oldest daughter is now 14, and I have 3 different schools that we manage as a whole. I thought I would do a game that they commonly do as one of their icebreakers. So meaning that they do 2 truths and a lie, but I thought I'd expand it a little bit for you all as a whole. So and Robin knows this about me. So I aim for 6 meals a day if I visit Montreal. It's quite the food city. B, my children have never participated in PDSA cycles. C, I clam on Pacific Northwest Islands on the regular. D, my fellowship mentors had me take a public speaking class. And E, I knew QI would be my career track since fellowship. So whoever's brave, or you can put it in chat or whatever you think of for the 2 lies. Of course, Kogan. All right. Yes. Thanks, Erin. Yeah, we got 2 lies in there. Elizabeth, you want to try? Yep. All right. Thanks for that, you all. So yes, it is B and E. So I'll just tell a little bit about myself. I actually went to undergraduate and medical school in Montreal. So I lived there for 8 years. The food scene there is amazing if you've never been, and the total solar eclipse will be there in April of 2024. So coming up, if you missed it the last time it was around, had gone through the Pacific Northwest and through Texas the last time. So I'm excited to go over there, and literally I try to put in as many meals as possible because it's just absolutely delicious, with lots of real bagels, right, Robin? um, and I the Pacific Northwest Islands, if you've never been, there are so many, and they are just a wonderful and beautiful place. So I highly recommend them if you're ever coming out here to visit us. It is just peaceful and beautiful and gorgeous wherever you look, mountains and water all around. Yes, I was a very shy, very difficult public speaker. And one of the best things that I did in fellowship was actually an opportunity to actually took a couple public speaking classes, but I had one that was actually geared specifically towards presenting research and learning and practicing. And it was very painful at the time that I did it for someone who was incredibly shy in that moment, but helped hone what I did, and I'm very grateful that my mentors took the time to encourage me to do that in that moment. And I definitely did not know that QI would be my track since fellowship, but I am very fortunate to have had some serendipitous opportunities along the way that got me there, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. And in one of those tracks that I did, I actually took a class for at Cincinnati Children's, the Advanced Improvement Methods class, and one of the projects that I had to do was actually focused on learning and teaching other people about what happens with bottlenecks in a system, and had my children talk about their morning routine with them, trying to get your children off to school, which my youngest child at that time was 1.5 or 2, and she was absolutely the bottleneck. And so what we had to learn was that if we help the bottleneck, then we can all get out of the door faster and through the system as a whole. And they actually helped me win a presentation award for participating in those PDSA cycles. So I am very fortunate to them for making that happen. So just a general talk about my path. Actually, in my first foray in my fellowship project was actually in ARDS with adults, and I had it was a small pediatric pulmonary program. I was at UCSF at the time for fellowship. I actually had done my residency at UCLA, and then came to California. I was actually really sick of the cold in Montreal. Beautiful city to eat in, too cold to live in the long run. And so have been really enjoying California, and then the West Coast up north in Seattle for all these years now. But was very fortunate to have joined and be exposed to clinical research in a very powerful setting, I would say, where you had sponsorship and you could see mentors acting. And I had multiple mentors in that scenario on the adult scene. And I really appreciated that degree of experience with how do you do and write clinical research. So even though it didn't end up being my main focus at the time, actually it was a side project. And so in clinical care at the time, one of the pediatric pulmonologists, Dr. Nancy Lewis, she came up to me and she said, "Hey, like we're really having trouble transitioning kids from in CF to adult care. Would you like to join us on a quality improvement project?" It was like my last year. I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to include myself into that." So it was a side QI fellowship project, and that's when I started the work. And I actually started. Then I got a job in Seattle. I moved here to be an attending, and at the same time, the CF Foundation put out a call for applications to ask, does anyone do any CF-funded quality improvement work? And would you like to participate in a writing workshop? And so I did that, And when I was doing that, I learned, I'm like, oh, there's other ways of doing quality improvement and writing quality improvement and actually being more rigorous about it that actually followed more of a scientific method. So I learned what I should have been doing when I was doing quality improvement at the time at that. And then, fast forward a few years, and I'd had opportunities to participate in our institutional quality improvement scholars program. I had mentioned I'd done an advanced improvement methods class in Cincinnati following that. And I've had a number of projects over this time in medication safety. We have standard work pathways in the hospital that I've managed, and we launched a program called Trach Safe, where we follows surveillance endoscopies in children with tracheostomies, and we've had widespread use of trying to really improve emergency airway management from a home nursing and community perspective. And more recently, I'm part of the Cystic Fibrosis Learning Network, and that is a multi-center QI collaborative, essentially, where we are really focused on broad aims and focusing on including with the community and partnership there, co-producing a lot of these QI interventions. So it's really been a great journey. I also do a lot of data-driven improvement work. So really now focusing on the electronic medical record and epic optimization and trying to really leverage the mass streams of data that we have present in order to leverage that for improvement work going forward. And I have a home spirometry project that I'm doing now. So it's been a huge swell and lots of opportunity, and I have more projects than I can actually possibly do all at once. But it's been pretty fantastic as well. And all of it just sort of came to be. And now people pay me to sort of direct a lot of the stuff as opposed to, so it's not as research focused as it has become more of an administrative role as it once was, but I get to publish what I am paid for administratively. So it's been a really fun balance as time has evolved over time. Okay. So I just have a few, these are kind of word dense slides overall, but there's a couple of things that you have to balance, and some things that I've taken from my clinical research background in thinking about what is the main aims of your project. And so really thinking about how do you practice and perceive what is the aim that you're going for and focusing. So and there's a model for improvement that I use most frequently, but there's lots of different frameworks for quality improvement to go forward. So when you're thinking about your improvement project, what are you trying to accomplish? And how do you get those early wins? I mean, how do you know that a change is an improvement? Because a lot of times we implement changes in what we're trying to do in clinical practice without actually understanding how we intend to measure and how we intend to plan that out. I think that focusing on the mentors are who helps scope the project overall and helps you determine what's the feasibility of data and measures to collect. I've had projects where I failed tremendously by doing too big of a chart review, and it was too slow to actually make any real-time improvements as a whole. That was a medication safety project I did. I'll never do that again. I'm looking for data now that is easy to attain and I can get it, and it's focused on that. The QI is
so sorry. We're kind
are
of
we
at
out of
the
time?
10-minute mark, but do you think maybe 30 seconds to 1 more minute you might be able to
Yeah,
finish?
I'll just finish it up because I think
Sorry about
the
that.
intention of no problem. Sorry, Laura, I didn't realize I was going over. So
Problem. Stuff.
no problem. Yeah, I want to leave time for everyone. So anyway, I think again these sort of things that Erin had mentioned too, that being a team and knowing who your collaborators are, being really open to, there are going to be people who know exactly what you want to do in the same way, but you can find lots of people out there. And then I listed a bunch of training opportunities. And the last slide just includes just where there's some elements and resources that you can have for later. So I'll be happy to take lots of questions later. Thanks.
Thank you, Theda. We appreciate that, and really cool to hear how you took a public speaking class or course in your fellowship, and here you are getting up giving presentations. So awesome stuff there, and your mentors did well. Our next panelist is Dr. Christy Sadramile, and I know actually I'm going to say up front, Christy got a URI just like all of our patients and probably half of us on this Zoom call right now. But Christy is going to try to power through, and we thank you for that, Christy. So welcome.
Thanks for that introduction. I mean, I feel pretty good, but this is not what I normally sound like, and I do like to talk normally, so sorry for how I sound. So I'll be speaking about child advocacy and public policy as a route for career success. I don't have conflicts of interest, but I put a disclaimer. I'm still figuring this out for myself. And as I was writing this, I was like, oh, am I really an expert on this? But I convinced myself that I do know quite a bit about this as I made my slides and thought through it. So hopefully this is helpful to you guys. So I just wanted to share how I got into advocacy. It's not that exciting, but it's kind of funny actually to me. So I did med school in South Carolina, where I'm from. I did residency in Children's National. You could say proximity to DC. Did it get me interested in advocacy? Maybe a little bit, but I didn't do anything advocacy related then. And then I came to Hopkins, where I am still for fellowship. And I've stayed on for faculty starting in 2014. Just to kind of get a sense, for me, I was an art history major in college. I had no research background, no advocacy background. And I started to do clinical research during fellowship. And I focused mostly on sickle cell disease and pulmonary complications. I was really interested in environmental influences like tobacco allergies, things like that, and a little bit of asthma research that kind of touched on like in-home exposures and marginalization within the healthcare system. These are all kind of like advocacy adjacent. That's why I'm mentioning it. And I'm still on a traditional clinical research track. I just turned in my K-23 progress report, the final one, because I finished my K, and I'm a little bit like, what comes next? But I've been working with some outstanding mentors who have helped me not only in research, but also helped encourage my advocacy. And how did I get into this? A mentor asked me to. Literally, that's it. This is one of my most beloved mentors, who was also my fellowship director, Sharon McGrath. She's now at CHOP. She was at Hopkins for a long time. The Peds Assembly wanted to start an advocacy committee. And Sharon came to me and said, I put you up for this. And I tried to say no. I was like, that sounds fun, but I don't know much about that. I just had a baby like a few months ago. I'm just back to work. I'm not an expert on that. And she really pushed me. And she made me meet with Stephanie Davis, who is the Peds Assembly chair. And together they convinced me to do it. I think they selected me because I really didn't have advocacy experience, but I had a lot of interest. And a lot of the things I knew about were very well suited for advocacy. Tobacco, asthma, sickle cell. I'd become a volunteer media expert for the American Lung Association and started doing a ton of media interviews. And like a lot of those interviews are also kind of advocacy adjacent, like public health stuff. So I think that's why they asked me to. And I've learned almost everything about advocacy that I know since then. And we had our first committee meeting in December of 2019. This is just how our committee is structured now. I mean, for me, advocacy started because of my committee. So I want to mention my committee. We have 4 subsections that we don't stick to strictly, but these are some of our areas of interest. So e-cigarettes, tobacco, stock albuterol policy, pediatric rare and chronic lung disease, and air quality and environment. And we have about 30 members, I'd say 20, maybe like 18 to 20 who are active. And that's a picture of me with Gary Ewart. He is ATS staff who does federal advocacy. And a lot of what I know about advocacy and a lot of the projects I've taken on are directly from Gary. I just connected with him after I decided to start this committee, and he graciously has been sort of like a mentor and has just joined the committee and gone along for the ride with us. So in terms of like work products and outputs, publications are a very obvious one and obviously traditionally recognized. I just realized that all of my very definitely advocacy publications have only been published in Annals of ATS. I was thinking like, oh, really, it was all Annals. So Annals is a great place to publish advocacy stuff, apparently. So the first one is a viewpoint. It's a perspectives piece that goes through some history and some health concerns when Primatene Mist was put back onto the market. That was my first one that I did. The second one you see here is actually an official ATS document that people applied for and made a group. It's the first and last authors are on my committee. And I was also involved in this work. So this is a policy statement that was a joint policy statement between ATS and some other organizations explaining how to do laws to have albuterol in schools for emergencies. We get some water. And then the third one is another perspectives piece. And it was a group of people from my committee who were thinking about, this was earlier in the COVID pandemic, like what has the pandemic brought to light for our field, both good and bad. And I think it was a really cool piece. I recently revisited it. And I also have another piece that is currently being reviewed that I wrote with a couple other members. So definitely can get some publications out of this. You guys asked to mention the best places to distribute and publish projects. I mentioned annals. I do a lot of media, and that includes anything from public radio interviews, podcasts, video, and print interviews. I do a lot of this, and I do it because it's fun. Doesn't take that much time. I don't always say yes, but I think it's public health messaging, and it goes really hand in hand with advocacy work for me. I'm going to mention shortly, trying to get laws passed, and I think that should probably go on your CV. I'm not sure where else to put it, but if you had a big hand in getting a law passed that helps kids' health, I think that's important, but I'm not sure the venue other than, I guess you could post it on Twitter or something, but it should definitely go on your CV. So other work products, and again, thinking of my committee and the work we've done, but also things I've personally been involved with. So I mentioned getting laws passed. There are people in my committee that have either directly or indirectly had gotten laws passed for their state. So all 50 states have a stock EpiPen law. So schools can have an EpiPen on hand for emergencies, but only either 16 or 17 states have a stock albuterol law. So this is a current area of interest. And so in Iowa, they have a law because someone on my committee was like, I want to do this. Tony Fisher, he did it. He got the law passed just from one of our meetings, decided to take it on. Took 2 years. Texas had a very kind of a weak law. And again, one of my committee members was like, this law isn't very good. It doesn't help that many kids. It's too narrow. So she got a group of advocates together and they updated the law, now signed. It's an official law and it's really strong law now. I've been working in Maryland for 4+ years. Story for a different day. We got some issues in my state on this. And then we have 2 national leaders on our committee for this, Anna Volerman and Lynn Gerald, and they've actually done a lot of scholarship from this. So I haven't been involved in this kind of research for it, but they do like implementation work. They do meta-analyses where I don't know if meta-analysis is the right word, but they'll do like an in-depth look at all the laws that are in existence and write about it, things like that. And then ATS sessions are also a work product that you can do. We've had a lot of symposia, workshops, policy statements, and meet the expert. These are some stock albuterol advocates at an advocacy symposium at the past ATS. And then what's been associated with success, excuse me again, in my track. For me, the mentors have been everything. Not just Sharon McGrath telling me to do this, but other mentors who've kind of helped me along the way see how this fits into my larger career. It's really helped me to work with advocacy experts too, like Gary Ewert from ATS, like Lynn Gerald, who is like the guru of stock albuterol nationally. I did just have some level of curiosity and just thinking, why not me? Who else is going to do this? Sort of like the education story, like, well, I guess I could do this, something that should be done. And listening to trusted mentors has really helped me a lot. I know I keep saying that, but it really has. And my interest and experience has grown. I'm putting a lot of this on my CV. We'll see how it turns out. This is when I spoke at a U.S. House event with some representatives in 2018. It was pretty exciting. I'm almost done with my slides, by the way. I think I'm at near time. So some advice / what I wish I knew. I would say that I think in our field, we're well positioned for advocacy. We've tried to make this point in this article that's coming out soon. We have a lot of expertise that's perfect for advocacy. So whether this is going to be your main career focus or just a side project or a hobby, I want to encourage people to think about it. Environment, tobacco, medical complexity, health disparity, system level issues with DME, insurance, etc., we are like a perfect field to do advocacy. It can be a passion, it can help reduce burnout, it can be very rewarding, and you can help a lot of kids through this. So some people are arguing for advocacy to count for academic promotion, and I think it should. I mean, I'm at Hopkins. Hopkins is very old school. So I don't know what they think of advocacy for me on a research track, but I will say I'm getting my publications, and I think it may take time for institutional change to occur. But I also think doing advocacy and networking that way can help you as you go from assistant to associate. And that's where I am now, because it helps you work within your field and get to know people and increase your national reputation. And here's a paper, if you guys are interested in this, Advocacy in Pediatric Academia was published in February, thinking about how to put it on your CV, how to use it for promotion, how this stuff should be viewed by institutions. So just a few pitfalls and principles. I would say don't say yes to everything. It is okay and absolutely necessary to sometimes say no. And you have to think of your time and priorities inside and outside of work. For me, it's not just saying no to like I'm doing a lot for Stock Albuterol in Maryland. I mentioned we have some issues. I can't say yes to every meeting. I can't take every meeting. I have to delegate. I have to be like the ALA person has to meet with them on that. I can't join that call, and just think about how to be thoughtful to do this work, but also realize my expertise and time is valuable, and I can't just like give it freely, or else I won't succeed with my patients, with my research, with my other stuff. I'm at a point now where I'm kind of marrying my interests, research fitting with policy, media interview topics. I think that saves time and energy. It's synergy. You can publicize the work you're doing. You can get people excited about your work. So I think that's my current strategy, just trying to marry my topics as much as I can. This is some of our committee at a Capitol Hill rally from the meeting, this last meeting. And that's all. I try to go fast enough to get it all in. Sorry, I sound so bad. That's me with my two boys. Just I alluded to like making sure you prioritize with your time. And that's my Twitter and email if you guys want it. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Christy. Yeah, your voice held up very well, and you've been a blazing force in advocacy, and it's great to hear about it. All right, our last panelist is one of our former fellows here at Nationwide Children's, Robin Ortenberg. I think for all the fellowship directors on this call, it gives us a lot of pride to see the great things that our former fellows are now doing as junior faculty members. So, Robin, I'm gonna let you finish up here.
Great, thanks. Oh, sorry. Let me stop sharing and get to the beginning of my slide. You would think like 3 years into COVID, I would have figured out how to share my screen.
As she's doing that, I'll let you know that Robin taught me most of what I know about Zoom and Team and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that's sad. I'm so sorry. So, hi, I'm Robin. I am currently at Seattle Children's Hospital with Theta. Let me know if you are not seeing the correct slides presentation. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep going. So just to give you a little bit about my educational journey, I am one of those people who did each step of my training in a different place. So I did medical school in New Orleans in the post-Katrina years. That's where I'm from. And then my residency in Colorado. I think I was one of those PGY2s that did not get prep. I graduated just before that, and I would have loved it. So that's exciting to hear about. And then I came to Nationwide and worked with Dr. Kirkby for fellowship, and now I'm junior faculty at Seattle. I think what's a little unique about my journey is that I took a gap year between residency and fellowship, and actually did the Peace Corps Seed Global Health Service Partnership, which was an offshoot of the Peace Corps, where they send medical providers into medical education programs in Africa to teach the curriculum and to build capacity. So I went to Eastern Uganda, to Mbale, and taught the pediatrics curriculum, both didactics and bedside education, to their medical students. And when I was finishing that, I thought, wow, that was a great year of my life. What am I going to do with that? And how do I continue to make this a part of my career? And I realized first that I needed a better framework for how to think about public health issues and kind of population-based health issues. And for that, I decided during my fellowship that I really wanted to pursue a degree, a Master of Public Health, which I was able to get through George Washington University. I also had clinical experience in a different country, but I had not done research. So I really wanted to see what global health research looked like. So I was able to get a grant for international research through my fellowship hospital through Nationwide Children's. I think this is the only international grant that they have ever given because it was just that much of a hassle for everybody involved. But we did it, and that was great. Just the grant writing process itself in regards to global health was really an important learning opportunity for me. And then during fellowship, I also tried really hard to focus on what my specific clinical interests were. So while I was in Uganda, I took care of a lot of patients with sickle cell disease, and I became really invested in their health. And so in fellowship, we had a really great multidisciplinary pulmonary sickle cell clinic. And as I became a senior fellow, I tried to do more in that space because I thought it transcended public health, global health, and what I needed to do in a hospital setting more locally. So what is success in global health? And honestly, just getting something done is really what is amazing if you can do that. I will say I was not successful. My grant, I guess you could say it failed. We got the grant a few months before COVID hit. And so when I was supposed to be abroad for 3 to 6 months, the entire world shut down. And my research was on longitudinal lung function and PFTs in children with HIV in Vellore, India. And India stopped their outpatient clinical services, just like a lot of other places. And that grant really never was able to get off the ground. So I learned a lot from writing it, like I said, but have not been able to complete that. But I do think what is helpful in global health is finding other people to geek out with you about this. So finding clinical relationships and mentorship and research opportunities, not just within your geographic location, but what people are doing around the world. And I think when you go into things like ATS with that mindset, it really opens you up to meeting a lot of people and finding a lot of different opportunities. Success in public health is a little bit more straightforward in that you have a degree and you need to complete that degree before you graduate. So Steve and I would talk about, like, are you going to graduate on time? Will your coursework be done so I can submit it to the ACGME? And so you really have to be able to manage that coursework while still doing what you need to do for your fellowship. As part of the MPH, you do have to usually complete a practicum. And it was important for me for that practicum to work into what I was already doing clinically. So my practicum ended up being what was my QI scholarly activity for fellowship anyway. So kind of double dipping there. And usually you have to do a thesis. There's lots of places to publish. I think what's important is to think about non-pulmonary journals, and there's a lot of public health journals. But I also think it's really important to use global health as a jumping off point for advocacy and for other faculty talks or projects, because global health transcends a specific geographic area and is, you can kind of use it in various other places. So my advice, I think it's really important to be direct about your goals. I knew what I wanted to do going into fellowship. And so I went on my interview saying I want to do 3 to 6 months out of the country doing research, and I would like to get an MPH. And a lot of really great programs said, that's great. We're really happy for you. You should do that. We can't support you. And it was really important for me to know that as I went through the interviews and was kind of thinking through where I would be doing fellowship. But with that, I think it's important to look for flexibility and to be flexible. So one thing that Steve, Dr. Kirkby, and I talked about was, how do we make this work for you? If you want to spend so much time in your second and third years doing non-clinical work, how do we make that happen? And they ended up front loading a lot of my clinical duties into my first year. So I think I did about 8 months of service, which was hard but doable, but it set me up for success in my second and third years to take care of my degree. With that, you have to make a timeline early. So you have to really be able to think through how this will all work out within the confines of 3 years. And then I would also say that it's helpful to explore opportunities outside of what's available to you locally. As an example, so I think scholarship is really important when you're thinking about getting an MPH and getting some funding. And so for me, Nationwide Children's Hospital would fund a certain number of people to get their degrees, but they would only fund that degree through the local university, which is OSU. And OSU didn't have a maternal fetal program in public health. And so I kind of set out, applied for the scholarship, but then I researched online programs because for an MPH, you can go online, you can do a hybrid, or you can be fully in person. And I found an online program that had the focus I needed. I got the scholarship, and then I asked them to contribute those funds to the GW program. But really, you had to kind of think outside the box to make that work for me. In the same way that I did that for funding and scholarship, I think for grants, there's other places to look besides the traditional ATS scholarships, your hospital scholarships, those sorts of things. For sickle cell in particular, right? You can look for the American Society of Hematology. You don't just have to be looking towards ATS for that. And particularly for global health, it's really important to be thoughtful about accounting for your funding because the money will not stay in the institution that is giving you the grant potentially, and also to be thoughtful about who owns your data. So for our grant, our data was going to actually stay in India. So whenever we wanted to look we had to use statisticians in India, and we would have to go to India to really sift through some of that data. And that was important to know ahead of time. And also who will be your person on the ground. You can't be abroad all the time. So you need to create a network of people to help you wherever you'll be doing your research. In terms of pitfalls, I think research takes a long time. You always have to factor in additional time to get done what you want to get done. But global health research, you need even longer. There will always be something that comes up. I mean, supplies will get lost through customs. Things will happen. So you need to give yourself an even bigger buffer than you would normally do. Like I mentioned, it's difficult to fly solo. You need a mentorship somewhere within the US, but also people in other countries to help you. And then you really do need programmatic support. You need somebody who will work with you to create a schedule that allows you to achieve what you want, either from global health or from the public health standpoint. And then, like other people have mentioned, it's important that the scholarly activity that you do supports your career goals. So it's not enough just to do global health because that's an opportunity. You want to do the global health or the public health that will then you can take with you as junior faculty to lay the groundwork for a successful career. And so how that's translated for me, I took my thesis from my MPH and have created a grand rounds presentation and was able to give grand rounds at Seattle Children's, which was a really great thing for junior faculty to have on their CV for promotion. And so I'm using that information in a different way. We are creating a pulmonary sickle cell multidisciplinary clinic here at Seattle Children's. So I'm using that program implementation and public health framework to create community partners and to create new ways of treating our patients. And then I have a young child, so I can't go abroad right now, but one of the nice things about Seattle is our catchment area includes all of the states around us, including Alaska. And so our clinical work and my clinical work in the future will involve going to small communities in Alaska that you can only reach by plane or maybe boat and doing medicine there, which in a way, for me at least, satisfies my need for resource poor settings and being able to help people that normally don't have access to healthcare without all the bells and whistles that we have in our tertiary care centers. So with that, thank you very much. And I think we're open for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. And actually, thank you to all four of our panelists. We do want to open this up for questions. If anybody has anything, you can use the chat. You can feel free to unmute. You can even feel free to unmute and put yourself on video, but you don't have to. But really, we want this last bit of time to be discussion with our panelists. I'll start off. Each of you have talked about the importance of the great mentoring that you got as really being a factor that got you to this non-traditional part of your fellowship training now that you're using in your career. And so, one of the things that I think is a challenge is we all have scholarship oversight committees as part of that's a requirement for the boards. And so, were there any particular challenges that you guys had in formulating a scholarship oversight committee to be a part of your training program? And then also, did any of you encounter any problems with using your work to ultimately get credit with your final scholarly work project that you turn into the boards at the end of fellowship? I guess
can
that's a
comment.
question. Anybody? Thanks,
Yeah.
Erin.
Yeah, I can comment on that. So for the scholarship requirement, that was easy for me because ACGME clearly states that, you know, a curriculum development project qualifies you for your, you know, formal scholarship. So that's easy to do. It has to be a rigorous curriculum development project, and so that's why like going through the process is important for that. I do think that, you know, now in the post-COVID area, things might be a little bit easier for some of these untraditional routes because we're so used to virtual meetings now. Like when I was a fellow, that wasn't really a thing. But one of my sort of mentors that was on my SOC was not local. And so we would have to Zoom them in, and it was always an ordeal, but it worked out. But I think that it would be a benefit to some of the current fellows finding outside support for your SOC would be really cool. And I know that I used some of my ATS mentor connections as like sort of support system for me, but none of them were formally on my SOC. But I think that would be a really cool opportunity for some fellows, you know, people that you'll meet in this session or along the way would probably be happy to help support you in that.
I had some difficulty with my SOC because we wanted somebody who also did global health research on my SOC. And we found somebody who is one of the ICU docs who was great. But the downside of that is that she worked in, I think, Malawi for a good portion of the year and didn't have access to the internet at that time. So we could only do my SOC during very specific days of the year, which I think drove everyone who was organizing them a little bit crazy. And I think that is a unique thing to global health. I don't know that that would really be, with the advent of Zoom, I don't think that's important necessarily everywhere else. But for global health, making sure that the people that you need to talk to, that you have access to them is super helpful. I didn't have any trouble getting this. My MPH ended up being my scholarly activity for fellowship because we knew that global health research was hard to get off the ground and completion might be a little bit iffy. I did have the MPH as my, what I showed them as my scholarly activity. So it was nice to have that as a backup.
Thank you, everyone. That was like really fascinating to hear about these non-traditional pathways available. So I was just curious to see if you've like taken the work forward, or have you had experience of mentoring any current fellows or any projects that, you know, is going to sort of spread the work that you've already done, being so brave and courageous. I feel it's just amazing how you've gone off the traditional pathway and achieved so much.
For me, I know I'm pretty junior faculty. I haven't mentored anyone yet, but I do have a fellow who might be interested. So excited for that. So
yeah, I try to mentor a fair amount with and I try to do it in multiple realms. So there's just basic QI training that I think is part of your ACGME requirements. And so being exposed to that level and kind of understanding what it involves. And there can be little or big, but we have like just general didactics. And then we have like opportunities for more one-on-one for fellows who are really interested in that. Across the entire GME program, there's fellows who are interested in improvement projects. And then I also participate in like a larger QI scholars kind of opportunity. So whatever floats your boat, I'm game for.
Theta is actively mentoring me because I will be starting the QI Scholars program, and she is going to be the person who assists me with that project. So she does, yes, she has done QI mentoring.
And I'm lucky to work with Robin.
I think Reem had her hand up.
Hi, thanks so much for speaking. I did have a quick question about mentorship outside of your institution. I do feel like many people, even within your institution, are very happy to connect you with people who are interested in the same things you are, but I find it difficult after that initial connection or just saying hi, nice to meet you, to continue a sort of relationship with that person. What would you think is the best way to maintain a longitudinal relationship with someone who's interested in your same field but outside of your institution?
I think we all probably have similar advice, but I think formally asking, like if you want someone to be your mentor, saying that, like, do you have the bandwidth to take me on as a mentee? And so then that sort of sets the expectation up front that you want to continue a relationship with that person. And if that person does have the bandwidth to take you on as a mentee, setting up meeting times, like, you know, our clinical schedules are crazy, but if I know I'm meeting with you every Thursday at 3 p.m., then I can plan for that, or, you know, once a month or at whatever time or something like that. So then getting something on the calendar and having that just set up recurrent meeting that you both can prioritize to meet together. I'll also say that you should have a mentor within your department as well, sort of a co-mentor, just in case. And that mentor can help you if communication lines fall through with your outside person. I think, you know, anyone in pulmonary, I'm biased, of course, but I think we're all going to be super helpful and want to continue and make sure that you're successful. But you know, things come up and things happen. And so having someone in your department too, that you meet with regularly, that also knows what's going on in your project is really, really important.
If you do have mentorship outside of your department, which I think is really important for a lot of these, um, knowing that you can't just walk down the hall to talk to them, so having an agenda before you meet so that no one's time is wasted will also help make that relationship more successful since you have limited availability with them.
The other thing is, I'll add to, I agree with everything that's been said, but you should also like realize you have to be persistent as the fellow sometimes. Now that I'm faculty, I'm like, oh my gosh, I get it. I'm on the other side of this now. I just have a lot more demands on my time. And I really do forget sometimes when people want to meet with me. So like take the initiative, follow up. If I tell someone I want to meet, I'm not lying. So like then maybe I need them to then set the meeting though, not me. So be persistent is what I was going to add to it.
And then for I'll add to just what everyone has already said because I agree with all that. And also being like you have the opportunity to connect at various conferences, and it's just nice to kind of set up some of those meetings for some face-to-face time, particularly if you're out of mind, because it's always nice to just kind of catch up and make sure. I do that with a number of mentees along the way, so it's been fun.
Thank you.
Christy, in your talk, you brought up, I thought, a really important point, and it was basically saying, hey, where does this count on my CV? And that's really important as faculty as you start thinking about promotion and things like that. But for fellows in training, also building a CV is really, really important. And so I guess I know we have our standard institution CV, and you're right, there's not a box on that for advocacy. There's not really a box on it for QI. So I guess as a last question, maybe, do you all have advice on how you can advocate for yourself in terms of, hey, building this type of work, building it into your portfolio, your CV, which will help a fellow get a job at the completion of their training?
Yeah, I agree. There's not like an advocacy section, but I have started doing like where the publications are and it's topical. I've made like an advocacy section. And then for all my media interviews, which are not exactly advocacy, but kind of to me related, I have those as a section too that I just made. And I link out to them. it's an experiment. We'll see how well received this is. But I think the fellows could do something like that with any of these areas.
Advice I would give to fellows and all faculty is if there's not a box for it on your CV, make one and highlight it, make it big, bold. So a concept of non-traditional scholarship is that it's non-traditional, right? It's a lot of CVs and a lot of programs for advancement are based on traditional, basic clinical or translational research. And so be advocates for yourselves and really work to highlight the great things that you're doing in fellowship and beyond. I know we're at, I think, the end of the hour. I'm not sure if the Zoom call is going to get cut off. It probably won't, but it may. I know probably several of us are happy to stick around for a few more minutes if there are any last minute questions or you want to put anything in the chat. And then I think I can also speak for all of our panelists saying everyone involved with this wants to be a resource, certainly a resource for fellows. Please reach out to us by email, come up to us at meetings. We've got CHEST, we've got the CF conference coming up, and then of course at ATS where all of us are involved. Please, fellows, if you see us, if you connected with one of the panelists, go out and make a point to introduce yourself to them, and that's a great way for building relationships and building mentorship. So I'm going to say thank you to everyone, but again, stick around if you have some extra time and want to see if you want to get a last minute question in.
Yes, thank you all. Thank you everybody for coming, and thank you to our panelists. Really appreciate your time. Those were great talks. I had a quick question for you, Theda. You had a comment in your last slide about IRB in terms of publishing QI, QI projects, and it is institution specific. I'm curious what your experience has been.
This has come, I think, in order, well, as part of the Squire guidelines, which is like our publishing standards, there's an ethical consideration section that you have to address. So it shouldn't be a determination on your part that it is a quality improvement project, as much as you can try to address that as a whole. So reaching out early to whatever channel. So for example, I know Boston has a totally separate quality improvement track that you can submit and go through. But at our place, anything that is not research is a separate kind of, which includes possibly QI. And there have been a lot of gray lines now that I have had different people respond to me in different ways for the same project, even about what qualifies or doesn't qualify for improvement. So start that journey and try to, answer it as a whole. It's super frustrating. It's almost like the field itself is moving, but the regulations or the people who are looking at them are making different considerations for it. And I, just writing it and trying to figure it out as we make it together.
I've had similar experiences, so that's comforting to me that someone else has had that experience too. That's awesome.
Yeah, I just wanted to also add along the same lines, if you've had challenges with getting protected time or funding for ongoing projects moving forward, I guess that's the other big part of academic jobs is research is heavily funded, but many of these non-traditional projects are not looked upon as favorably from a funding standpoint.
Yeah, I think if anyone has any suggestions on how to get education as like a meaningful time experience, please let me know, because yeah.
Same. Yeah, I don't have any protected time for this. I just somehow do it.
Hopefully we can change that.
I know.
Yeah.
All the amazing work that you're doing. It was really great to have all of you. And thank you, Lara and Steve, as well, for organizing this.
Great. Thank you, guys. Enjoy your day.
Thanks. It was great to see you all.
Bye.